Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of We Hunt Together. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down, so let's break this down. First and foremost, I really quickly have to note, I'm actually recording this intro well after I'd already recorded the recording, because obviously I'm in the process of uploading everything right now, and I found out that this was actually the season finale. Because going into this, I didn't realize this was the season finale, because for whatever weird reason I was under the impression there were 8 episodes. I think I was confusing this with a different show, but it's like I didn't realize that this was the season finale, so I felt kind of stupid. So I'm recording this now, so obviously everything else is going to stay what was already recorded. I'm just going to be changing the intro and outro, so enjoy. First and foremost, we're picking up where last week's episode left off. I love that we don't even get to see the in-between of like, all right, you were both in the car and Johnny was outside with a gun, yet somehow Johnny's messed up. He's tied to the chair inside the house. I'm like, how did you do that? I'm assuming just based on the conversation, Johnny was like, he was caught off guard by Freddy, and then like some shenanigans went through. I mean, obviously Baba can handle himself, so maybe a combination of a 1-2. Maybe he got too close to the car and then Baba, knocked him out. Whatever the case may be, it had to be more so Baba doing something, because for him to be as jacked up as he is, but it also shows like the fact is that he's so willing to still trust Freddy. Kind of shows like, because he still thinks that she's like the victim in this situation. It's like, I get it, you love the guy, you like the guy and everything, but basically we're talking about the rest of your life. Don't get dragged down by him. I thought it was so interesting, because obviously they got their plans. It's like, okay, we're going to go to Pascal, and it's like, oh, can we trust Pascal? And it's like, he's like, oh, I trust him with my life. So obviously Baba's listening to all this stuff between Johnny about, Freddy and everything, and I think it's making him kind of think, because I was wondering, it's like, is he going to second guess this? Is he going to try and run because he, wants to take, like, I wasn't sure what Baba was going to do, what was necessarily going through his mind. Opens up the door, oh, there's a cop. Hey, have you seen, looks down at the clipboard or whatever in his hand, it's them. I'm like, damn, I didn't expect that. So now it's a hostage situation, cops showing up, Lola and Jackson are there trying to figure out the situation. The dude that's in charge is kind of a bit of a dick, being like, no, what was it? You have to go full force with a guy like this, or he'll fuck you and what, fuck you when not, or something like that. Like, he'll fuck you up the ass or something like that. I'm like, that's an interesting turn of phrase of just like immediately, like, but I get it. It's like, this is the type of dude like who will screw you over type of situation. So you got to kind of take quick and decisive action. You got to hit hard type of situation. So now it's just like the cops are outside, because I was wondering, like, in all this confusion, did they manage to slip away or something? It's like, no, they're still in there. Johnny's still tied up and everything. So it's like, I was like, okay, so how's this all going to play out? Obviously Jackson's the one willing. He's like, he wants to talk to Baba, because he's like, if I could talk to Baba, I can, figure this out. And what's interesting is that the entire time, what's Lola focused on? Hey, it's Freddy in there? Who's Freddy? The woman that's with him. It's just like, oh, I bet you Freddy. And it's just like, Lola, let me talk to him. And it's like, are you going to ask him for permission? And he's like, no, you clear it with him. And, Jackson goes to the door and everything. Baba brings him in, because it was a little bit of a tense thing, because I was like, okay, like, is Baba actually going to shoot him or not? But obviously they talk, and I even love him being like, can I put my arms down, because they are aching a little bit, and Baba's like, yeah. He's like, oh, good. I'm like, just this lax moment between them. But obviously it's a conversation of, obviously Baba wants out. And it's interesting because obviously at first, like, Baba and like Jackson have that back and forth about like the soul and everything. And like, obviously for Jackson, it's like, oh, he believes in science. But obviously for Baba, he believes, no matter, kind of basically like, no matter what terrible things you could do, like the soul and everything, it's about feeling guilty. It's about forgiveness. And it's like, do you think, because it's like, how do you think this is all going to work out in the end? And obviously at the end of the day, Baba kind of does want forgiveness, but it's like, are you willing to go as far as continuing murdering people just to get that at the end of the day? It was just interesting, almost like, I guess you could make the argument it's kind of like a theological like debate and moment, like existential thing that was going on between them in this moment. But whatever the case may be, Baba was kind of like, all right, give me the car, give me Johnny's car. If you don't, I'm gonna kill him in 5 minutes. Lola's trying to tell the dude, give him the car, but it's like, nah, we're gonna wait for, full force to show up. But like, Baba was like, give me the car before the full force shows up. And obviously the clock is ticking down. And I thought it was actually kind of this adorable moment, not adorable, but this beautiful moment where Lola was like, all right, give me the keys. And he's like, what? He's bluffing. It's like, my partner's in there with a gun to his face. I'm asking you to do the right thing. please. I was like, that was such a beautiful moment, because I also was like, you've never really referred to Jackson as your partner. In that moment you did, so I thought that was beautiful. And obviously time is clicking down. Baba's threatening to shoot, Jackson now. So it's like, all right, literally got down to the wire. Lola pulled up with the truck and everything. So it's like, okay. I'd actually forgot to talk about a really, really important detail. And I thought was so interesting. It actually took me a bit because I had to rewind it. It's the fact of the matter is Jackson was like, there's one thing that I've been wondering about. The eye situation. He's like, on the hands and everything. And it's like, oh, because... guy sees everything we do with our hands. And then Jackson dropped his hands. He was like, where's Freddie? And I was like, what in that conversation? And then after rewinding it, I was like, of course, the eyes were on the feet, not the hands. So that was proof to Jackson. And because we could tell, because that's what you could tell from the look from Freddie, because Freddie was like trying to see what Baba was going to do. She had that look on her face the moment Baba talked, because it's like, damn it, like he's seeing through it. It's like, yeah, in that moment Jackson realized Baba wasn't the one who drew the eyes, it was Freddie. So meaning that she was the main contributor behind the murder. He was kind of the weapon, but she pointed it in a particular direction of Simon and everything. So, and then we get into the whole thing of like, she doesn't love you, you know that? The fact is trying to say that obviously Freddie is a little different from you and me. She was born with a different brain. He's like, actually, it's not that I hate Freddie. He's like, actually, I like Freddie. But the fact of the matter is she doesn't love you. She can't love you because just her brain works a little differently. Like, the fact is she wants to love you. She wants to want to love you, but she can never do that, So it's kind of like, obviously, because there was a whole conversation about like, he wanted to be a pediatrician because his dad, in the village was like the head teacher and everything, but it's like you still have your life ahead of you. Just don't let Freddie drag you down and all of this. You could have that life and everything, but when the time comes, he does let Jackson go. So now it is a situation of like, all right, we gotta go. Johnny ended up setting himself free. It's like, don't make me shoot you, Baba. And Baba was like, don't make me shoot you, Johnny. And then Freddie's like, all right, Baba, shoot him. And because at first Johnny's confused. It's like, don't, go ahead, shoot him. He's like, I don't want to. And she's like, Baba. And he's like, Johnny's like, wait, what? Because once again, in his mind, he's thinking like, Freddie's the one helping him and everything. But he thinks that it's kind of a Romeo and Juliet thing in a sense of like, oh, you're in love with him. You're not an accomplice to everything, even though you are the instigator and the accomplice to everything that Baba's done in this season. And obviously you dirtied your hands last episode with the whole Kian situation. So when it's all said and done, though, like Johnny's looking like what? And obviously for Baba, he's seeing his younger self, because obviously this is another person that's like, in his mind, Johnny might be a bit of a dick, but Johnny isn't a bad guy, so it's a situation he doesn't want to do it. They exchange fire. It looks like Johnny gets shot and killed. Baba gets injured. I'm like, okay, how's this all going to play out? And so, Freddie's like, come on, get up. But he's like, no, I can't. And for her, it's like, he's right. What, Jackson said was right. I don't love you. But she's like, I want to love you. That's the same thing, right? And that even kind of makes you feel a little sad, because you can tell that she does want to love him, but it is just like she's incapable of it. Like her brain doesn't work the same way. Because once again, like I've talked about it before, like she has in her own way, like this twisted notion of kind of like what love is and what it should be, And so it's like, but the fact is, that's the same thing. Wanting to love someone is the same thing as loving them. But obviously for Baba, it's like, I'm okay with the fact is that you can't love you, that you don't love me, that you can't love me. Because for him, it's like, you already saved me because you saw me when no one else was. She's like, I do see you. And so I thought it was kind of fascinating, even her being like, if we met when we were children, maybe we could have saved each other. But obviously, Baba's like, go ahead. And he's got the gun ready. I was like, are you about to kill yourself? Like, what are you about to do? And he's pointing it towards Freddie. Like, you're going to shoot her, make her look like the victim and everything. He's like, just hold still. And she's even like, baby. And then like he ends up shooting her. And I'm like, okay, so the situation ended up playing out a little bit like I thought. Well, I kind of got some aspects of it right, but not all of it. Because I previously, in a previous review, had been like, okay, how I thought this whole thing was going to play out was they were going to get arrested, and then like she was going to play the victim and say like everything was Baba, because technically everything was Baba, because she never really directly did anything until the Kian situation. That's the only thing she directly did anything in both aspects of knocking him across the head and pushing him into the water and everything. Regardless, obviously Baba comes out with the gun. Everyone's locked and loaded. I did not expect Lola to jump in the way, because for her, she wants to, and that's the kind of the sad thing, because it's like, do you want to save Baba just so you can get Freddy. Is that what this is about? It's because you know Freddy's guilty of sin and you don't want Baba to take the fall to him die, because it's like he's the last key. If you could get him to talk about the fact that it was Freddy, then it's all good. But she's like, please don't do this, Baba. Please don't put the gun down. He raises up the gun and ends up getting shot. And obviously as he's bleeding out, dying, he's saying like, I'm the one that did everything. Matt, Simon, Kian, I did all of it. And now the record, like it's a death confession, because he's saying in a recording and everything. And obviously, Lola's asking like, where is Freddy? And obviously she goes in there, and it's like, because obviously Jackson was getting pissed at her, because it's like, what are you trying to get yourself kid? It's like, well, can you really say that, considering the fact that you literally did the same thing going to Baba, even though he has a gun on you and everything? But I think it's more so like, you were literally in front of a firing squad that you could have easily just gotten killed either by Baba or them. So what are you doing? Once again, it's just, you were both acting a little crazy in this situation. But obviously she comes in there, and Freddy's like, Lola, it's like, oh, he shot me and everything, and she's playing the victim card. You're like, and Lola's just looking so disgusted. And obviously, as she's leaving, like, Jackson's chewing her out for what she's doing, and going as far as saying that, oh, it's not the case, it's not the job, it's not drugs that you're addicted to, it's the guilt. And for her, it's like, all right, honestly, you're an arrogant prick. And yes, a lot of the things you say are actually true, but for her, it's like, I'm not the one that's in the wrong line of work, Jackson. You are. So find your own fucking way home type of situation. And I think it's because for her, it's like, when this pure evil that exists in this world, who are you gonna want by your side? You with your big heart, or me with my big stick? So it's like, we're dealing with, it's like, it's fine and dandy to be kind of a big softy, to have this big heart, but it's like, there are times where you can't, have that compassionate side of things. You need to just, I would assume she was, when she was referring to big stick, I'd assume she was referencing Roosevelt, because that was Teddy Roosevelt in particular, because that was his whole thing about big stick. Like, that's kind of like a big thing with him. So that's what I was wondering, if that's what she was quoting. Maybe not, which is interesting, because obviously, like, the whole Matt situation dealt with a big stick. So it's just kind of interesting in that regard. I mean, they ended up finding Darren's glass because she was holding a stick at the time. But regardless, so, like, obviously you could tell, like, it hit Jackson, and so he went home and talked to his wife, and it was this moment of him being like, it's my fault. Like, nothing was really said too much. It's like, she's like, oh, Dom called me, are you okay? And he's not really saying anything, but then he's like, it's my fault, too, saying, like, what their issues isn't just on her, it's him for not, talking about things, not really dealing with things in the best way either. So he recognizes that. So he shows up to work, and lo and behold, Lola's there. He's like, oh, come on, Lola, you can't sleep here. Because for him, it's like, oh, I was going to basically do this whole breakfast thing. I was going to kind of roll out and kind of like make it up to you and stuff like that. But obviously, it's like, all right, here's the stuff with Freddy's car. This car is here. It's near where the hit and run situation happened. So... And he's like, okay, so are we friends again? And she's like, you can fuck right off. And it's like, yay, we made up a little bit. We're back to our little rapport. But when it's all said and done, Freddy is in there, like, when the next day or whatever, or sometime later, she's in there talking, because it's like, okay, like, obviously she's putting everything on Baba. So this is where I was talking about before. The circumstances getting us there wasn't quite what I thought it would be, but the end result is kind of the same, with her blaming it all on Baba, which is kind of messed up, because you do love him and you claim to have wanted to love him and everything, so it seems almost cruel and messed up that you're doing this. But to be fair, he created this situation so that you could get away with everything, because it's like, he knew you didn't love him, but you saw him, and that was enough for him. So it was enough for him to be, because Baba loved her regardless of she was unable to love him, so he wanted to do what he could to protect her. So I thought that was it's almost as complicated thing in that regard. It makes you feel a little bad, because you're like, oh, it kind of sucks, but at the same time, Baba sacrificed himself so that you could throw him under the bus. But her saying, like, all the stuff about, like, oh, but we just wanted Kian to confess all the stuff that, the allegations I had against him. And it's like, it's like, oh, he hit Kian against the head. And it's like, oh, I just saw something in his eyes. So, like, it's almost interesting, because obviously all the stuff she's saying about Baba doing, it was herself. And so... it's interesting whether, I guess she just had to kind of look inwards and describe what she felt like Baba saw in her during that moment and just kind of regurgitated it as be like, oh, this is me having seen Baba and what he became in that situation. It was just kind of an interesting thing. And you have Lola and Jackson along with the others in the room having to hear all of this, and it's just kind of like, all right, we gotta. And then she's showing it. What was interesting is like the music to the scene. It's not necessarily upbeat, but like it has this certain like. It didn't seem like the tense situation it was. It's just kind of almost like there was almost like this playfulness to the music because she's up there like doing the crocodile tears and everything, just be like, and like the lady that's interviewing her is chewing it up. It's like, oh my god, like it's just like she's getting so easily fooled and everything. So. And her being like, oh, can I go? I'm so exhausted. Obviously, Lola and Jackson bring all this to, their boss, trying to tell her everything about what went down, about Freddie. And obviously, their boss is even like, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not even asking you what you think. It comes down to basically what you can prove. Because it's like, what do you think a jury's going to say if you were in their shoes? And she's like, well, where's Freddie's shoes? Because there's a shoe print that's like Freddie's, because it's also like, oh, she's connected to the hit and run because their car was nearby. It's like, no, there's a driver that turned himself in about the hit and run. It's like, that's the sucky thing, because it's like I didn't expect that storyline to turn back in that regard, because obviously she showed up after he had already gotten hit, and after Dan had already gotten hit. So it's like she kind of got what she wanted, because it's like, oh, he's dead. Baba didn't do it, but hey, it worked out in the end. And also, it's like that driver felt guilty about it, and so he confessed. So it's like that kind of removes that situation. And even Susan being like, Lola, go get some sleep. You look like shit. And then Lola's there with like bags under her eyes, and Jackson kind of, you almost see this look on Jackson's face like, come on, boss, like, man, like, did you really have to say that? And it's just kind of, and then Lola just kind of slams stuff on the desk. And obviously, as Lola's out there in the hallway, Jackson's following her, and then lo and behold, who comes out the room? She could have waited, but she wanted to. She wanted to flaunt in front of them. And she's walking in slow-mo. She's smiling, them both looking at her. And she stops, winks at them, and as she's going down the stairs, she flips them off. It also puts in, like, it all, in retrospect, it now makes everything make you wonder, like, okay, so when it's all said and done, like, did this go the way Freddie was hoping it would? Did she hope that, like, being so in love with Baba, like, saying and doing everything she knew that she'd be able to manipulate him with, that this would kind of be the end result, or at the very least, it was a possibility? Or did it just all happen to work out for her? Like, it makes you wonder. Like, you want to believe on some level that she did truly care for him, that she did want to love him, that it wasn't all just a lie. I mean, once again, she manipulated him throughout the entire season, so for her having to for this to be like some long con game of manipulating him, it's like, oh, I get what I want, I'll use you until you're no longer useful, because it seems like she's basically done that with everyone. She did it with Simon, she did it with Matt. As long as you're an obstacle, or, because like she got a out of jail free card, get out of jail free card. Third time's the charm, right? Because of Baba and everything. So it's just, it makes you just think like, oh, like, is she kind of playing her own 3D version of chess? Or whether it's just kind of like everything just happily worked out. Like she wasn't constructing it. Like it's hard to say, which is how manipulative she's been over the course of the season. It makes you wonder, but regardless, it's frustrating. And obviously, Lola slamming her head against the steering wheel, and obviously Jackson's like, okay, I talked to Jill. Basically, she fell out of love with me for the past 2 or 3 years, and her reaction was the whole Thomas thing. Me was basically him kind of being a little distant and cold. So he's like, we both recognize that, we're going to let our marriage get a little stagnant. And she's like dirty water. He's like, yes. He's like, oh, it's so like refreshing having that weight off my shoulders. Basically saying like, basically any part of your life, both of us having careers, both of us, us having 2 children, and everything. It's any aspects of any aspect of life is going to take any of those aspects of life will need like 60 to 70% of you, and obviously the math doesn't add up when you total that all together. So for him, it's like he thinks this is kind of best, they figure stuff out, and then like some point down the road when the kids are old enough out the house making their own mistakes, that we can find a way to fall in love with each other again. It's like, I would have never gotten to this point if it wasn't for you, Lola. And she's like, I'm sorry for calling you an arrogant prick. You're not an arrogant prick, you're an idiot. But they're smiling and laughing about it. So they came to see Frederica's mom to get the letters that Lily had sent her. And obviously we cut back to like Jackson and Lola because they're talking a little bit about like obviously like those piss, the vials for like, piss tests and stuff like that. And obviously the whole conversation about, Lola being like, oh, like the person's patting her down and she has to, she's clenching hard, even to the point now it's like, oh, I can't unclench. But obviously it's the thing of, it was this interesting thing that, obviously for Lola, it's like, I need to know what you're thinking, Jackson, about it. And Jackson saying that all's well will be well, essentially. So I think trying to say that, that it will all kind of work out in the end, in some shape or form, And so Lola staying there looking over the letters and everything. And she finds something. And I thought it was interesting. Like, obviously, it's like, okay, we'll probably dissect the letters a little bit more next episode. But obviously, she's got she sees the symbols from the feet on the page because she gave the same excuse that Baba, the lie that Baba had spun. She kind of spun it to be like, he said, yeah, they represented God or something. So like she was able to come up with that lie because Baba already gave it to her, beforehand when he was trying to cover for her. But I do like how that scene's constructed too, because it's just kind of the thing of like, we got her because she used those symbols beforehand. So this does at least put some direct correlation between these symbols and these notes and these letters that she wrote when she was younger and the symbols that ended up on Simon's feet. So there's that, which I am curious to find out what the significance of that is. I'd assume it's just because it must have been something specifically between Frederica and Lily, or, because obviously, because also some of the letters were sent afterwards. I mean, so it still could have been something between them. So maybe that's what that's supposed to mean. I don't know. I'm curious to find out, myself, because I'm sure it's bugging and egging at everyone else, like what the significance of them are, those symbols are, but it's that moment of obviously Freddie's leaving, or at least it seemed like she was going to like the airport or something like that. And so at the time you're seeing like her look out the window in the cab and everything. She's smiling. At the same time you've got Lola smiling. So like the comparison, the contrast between the two I thought was kind of neat. So I am so curious to see where this goes. Like I said, for one, I wasn't expecting like I said, this is kind of where I thought things were going to go, but I would have expected this being like an episode 8 type of situation. I wouldn't expect it to be episode 6. We still got 2 episodes left to be like, how the hell is this whole situation going to play out? You're going to have to go after her before she potentially leaves town. I mean, she's packed up and ready to go. I wonder if she's going to meet up with Pascal, because that'd be interesting. I mean, because is she going to try and go to Morocco or whatever to meet up with Pascal? Or would they try to imply that Pascal was already here and he could get them passage to Morocco? I mean, either way, I'm wondering if she's still going down that route of planning that they had before, or is she just going with something else completely new? I'm so curious to see where everything takes us going forward. So as I brought up at the beginning, this is the season finale, which is weird having to record this well after the fact because I'm an idiot for not realizing it. But the fact of the matter is a lot of the stuff I still brought up still reigns true. So I am very excited to see, where this all potentially could take us in a second season. Obviously, looking into it, it's still unclear whether or not there is going to be a second season or series to this. Obviously, even if it is, it's going to be a while with everything going down, productions being the way they are. But I do hope we do get a second season. It's so crazy to think. The fact is that she's able to just kind of get away with it all potentially. So it probably could be a situation of we do see, Freddie or Lily actually leaving. She could end up meeting up with Pascal. So and now with this kind of thought in my head now, I'm thinking Pascal could be her new Baba, because she could be like, oh, Baba, and kind of manipulate Pascal, being like, oh yeah, he took care of me, he was there for me. And once again, now I'm sitting here even thinking about it, hours after having originally recorded this and everything. It is hitting me thinking about, it is kind of crazy to think about the fact is that Baba is gone. I wouldn't have expected that. So that's actually kind of crazy to think about in the grand scheme of things. But obviously it begs the question, obviously Jackson and Lola are more on the same page now, but also are they going to be able to stop Freddie before she's able to leave the country? I mean, but I'm still wondering, because we're bringing up Pascal over and over again, are we going to is he going to flow into the story in that sense? Like I said, is he going to be, Freddie's next Baba, or maybe she's going to find a different person to be her new Baba, like, you know, and what that means, especially because it's like, you know, Lola has a fever pitch about, you know, going after, you know, Freddy, so she's adamant about that, so that's become almost like her obsession, you know, so obviously Freddy's going to do everything she can to kind of lay low, and, you know, I'm just so curious to see, you know, where things could potentially pick up for all of this, you know, with a second season. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.